Wonderful. What a pleasure to welcome you to the UN in China podcast. Neil Bush,
Sid,
the
thank you.
brother of George Bush, President George Bush, and the son of George H.W.
And the
Bush,
uncle of George
another
Bush.
another
A lot
former
of a lot of George Bushes in our
another
family.
former president of the U.S. So,
Yes.
what an illustrious family dedicated to public service.
Yes, I mean, it's been pretty remarkable to witness my brother, my father, and others in our family, try to give back by serving. My father often stated that service is a noble calling, and giving back to your community, giving back to your country, giving back in small or large ways is something that extends life and gives you purpose and is something everyone should strive to do. Everyone should try to be a point of light in the lives of others.
A point of light in the lives of others.
You like
Welcome,
that? You
brother.
like that?
Welcome.
Yeah.
Lovely.
You can use that.
Beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully said. So let's jump straight in, Neil. You have you first came to China in 1975,
Yes.
and you visited China 150
It's
times,
been way more than that, but it's hard to, yeah, a lot. Probably under 200, but over 150.
over 150 times. Now, what is it that drew you to come here 150 times?
Well, I think it has to start when I first came in 1975. I was a 20-year-old college student. My dad represented the United States as the quote unquote bicycling ambassador. It was before we had official ties with China, so he was the chief liaison officer. My siblings and I stayed for 5 weeks, 4 weeks in Beijing. We traveled with my mom by train to Wuxi and Nanjing and Shanghai. And it was remarkable to witness China back at the end of the Cultural Revolution, when everybody was not impoverished, but very poor. Everyone was equally poor. The economy was closed. They wore the same clothes. There was tons of bicycles on the streets. And I came back from time to time and much more frequently over the past 30 years, and to witness China rise from a very poor, communist, freedomless place to where now people are enjoying liberties and freedoms and prosperity that were unimaginable back then has opened my eyes to the dynamics of economic growth and what it means in the lives of people. And so it's been a transformative thing for me personally. I've become obsessed with it, frankly, and I've developed very strong feelings. I'll give you an example. One of my siblings is a big believer in that democracies are the way that every country should be governed. Um, there are examples of benevolent authoritarian leadership
Yeah.
where that leadership has led to an enormous amount of growth and prosperity, the liberation of people in ways that were unimaginable before. I think of Singapore and their development, and they've become more of a democracy since Lee Kuan Yew took over and turned it and turned the country around. But China's system has worked for China, and it's not going to work for us. But it's worked for China. Every 5-year plan sets goals. Those goals are benevolent goals of trying to lift the quality of life, the standard of living for its people, or to make the earth cleaner and greener and put more EVs on the streets, or develop more renewable energies. And so that system has worked beautifully for China. They've got a long way to go. The Chinese economy is like a third, not a third, yeah, about a third of the size of ours on a per capita basis. But they're advancing and leaping forward in so many ways, and it's really been insightful for me, and I feel kind of privileged and blessed to have a front row seat in watching this development. And I've also become obsessed during my dad's lifetime. Towards the end, yeah, he had always been a strong advocate for dialogue and respectful deeper understanding and collaboration with China. And so he and I formed the George H.W. Bush Foundation for U.S.-China Relations, which I proudly chair, to promote my father's legacy interests in in promoting understanding and respectful dialogue and closer and deeper collaboration. Because he knew, and I know, and everyone who's thoughtful about it understands that our bilateral ties have lifted America to become the greatest, strongest, most powerful nation on the face of the planet. It's been through multilateralism, through globalization. China's our largest global partner. And so we should credit China and our bilateral relationship with China for helping lift us to this status. And at the same time, China, America should be proud of our role in helping lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It's been the classic win-win situation. And that global order is shifting, like quicksand right now. And it's kind of sad because people are shuffling, trying to find a new path for coexistence. And in the meantime, economies are being hurt.
Indeed.
The quality of life for people is not being realized at the rate it should be with more multilateral and collaboration and bilateral trade and that kind of thing. So these are very interesting times.
And what makes your point? I mean, you've had a front row seat. I mean, I've only read about it. That here are some interesting figures. Late 70s, 90% of the Chinese population was in abject poverty. 90%. And their per capita GDP between 1975 to 1979 was at approximately $180.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, most countries in Asia, many countries in Africa, many countries in Latin America had perhaps twice or thrice a per capita GDP than that of China. And today, it's quite remarkable. They've reached 12,500. I suspect had it not been for COVID, their per capita GDP would have been even higher.
For sure.
But that's pretty remarkable because you've seen the transition of this country, and now that you've been here 150 times, including Beijing being one of the most polluted cities. It was like a gas chamber.
I know.
And now it's a place where, I'm a runner and I run once a month. I do a half marathon. I mean, the air quality here is unbelievable in a city of this size and scale.
I totally agree. I mean, winters in particular were horrible to come to because you'd have to wait. I never had a gas mask, but you felt like you needed one. But it's amazing to me to witness a system that works so effectively at establishing priorities and implementing those priorities at every level down the government. And the KPIs that are established for the leadership, for them to advance to the next level, they need to meet those KPIs of economic growth or cleaning the air or putting more EVs on the road or whatever it is. And so that system has helped to make the air breathable and to help meet substantial goals. And their goals. And again, I get back to the point, their goals are benevolent goals. They don't have a mean-spirited nature to want to build a military that's going to aggressively take over the responsibilities of safeguarding the world, or to seek hegemony where they take their form of government to other places. There's a benevolent motivation behind the system that is helping to continue lift people to kind of heights that they couldn't have imagined back when I came here 50 years ago.
So, Neil, tell us a little more about your childhood. I mean, you've grown up in a family of politics.
It's
a family of public service.
It is pretty amazing to think that there have been two presidents in my family. You introduced me with that context. When my dad became president, it was kind of a fulfillment of an expectation. He's always been the wisest, smartest, kind of most experienced, most thoughtful guy on the planet. I've always viewed him in the context of hero status. And so when he became president, it was kind of a fulfillment of an expectation. But when I give speeches occasionally, I say, well, how many of you in the audience have a brother or a sister? And they raise their hands. I said, can you imagine your brother or sister being president? And of course, no one can. I couldn't imagine my brother becoming president. My brother, when I was 8 years old, and my brother Marvin was 6, he was 16, and he came back from Andover, for vacations and stuff, and he would never play with us. So one day he agreed to play with us. So he pulled a BB gun out of his closet in our home in Houston, Texas, where we had a long hallway. His room was at the end of the hall. And he said, "Okay, you guys, I'm going to count to 10, and you guys run as fast as you can down the hall." So he pumped up the gun, and we started running. He said, 8, 9, 10, boom, and he shot me right in my, I don't know if you can say this on your podcast, but right in my ass. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world could this guy ever get to be president of the United States? You know, and he did a great job. He was served with great honor and that kind of thing. But you know, I will never be convinced that there's ever been a better qualified president than my father in terms of experience, temperament, understanding cultural nuance, working with countries like China and others that aren't like us but have the same goals and aspirations. Yeah, my father was a uniquely gifted and talented president, and but both, I would say, my brother and father served with such, great integrity. They said what they were going to do. They did what they said they were going to do, and whether you thought it was right or wrong, there was honor in that kind of service. And they had scandal-free administrations, and so I'm very proud of both of the service. But my dad was my hero, always will be my hero.
Yeah, yeah. And I was very privileged to attend a reception that the former ambassador of the United States to China,
were you
Nick
there?
Burns, hosted.
Yes.
To rename the
Yeah.
ambassador's residence as Bush House.
Yeah.
So let's talk about
Can I tell
U.S.
you,
and
I was
go-
about
go
that.
ahead.
Yeah, that house was the same house as
You
know.
grew up in.
I didn't grow up.
You lived
we
there.
visited for 5 weeks.
Right, right.
Which is amazing. I said, Ambassador Burns, why is this house still the house of, because America normally has nicer homes in other parts of the world, and it turns out that the ambassador's home in the U.S. is in a neighborhood that's not the most desirable neighborhood, and so it's a quid pro quo kind of thing until the ambassador gets a nicer plot of land in the U.S. We're not going to be able to get one here for our side. It's like it's such a silly game that is being played. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so coming to the U.S. and China, I mean, Neil, today, first time post the Second World War, we are seeing an interlocking crisis. A crisis. We saw a health pandemic which exposed the fragility of human health and health systems across the world. It killed millions of people across the world. We've seen a climate crisis which looms like the sword of the Damocles over our heads. An existentialist threat, mind you. Over 80 conflicts all across the world. Rising hunger, rising inequalities. I have said, and I've consistently maintained this in my speeches at Yale University, recently at the Princeton China Forum, that the US-China relationship is the most consequential of the 21st century. Given the current state of geopolitics that we are seeing virtual fracturing of the world. What is it that could happen, Neil, to bring more focus and energy and momentum towards the challenges that we face as a humanity? And frankly, I believe China and the US actually have solutions to a lot of these problems.
Yeah, you would think it'd be
Neil, frankly, your views on where we can take this, how we can resurrect this relationship.
First of all, it's clear that we need to find ways to collaborate and work government to government, business to business. There are a lot of examples, in spite of the geopolitical challenges, of collaborations that have been established in recent years. I personally was involved in one that I'm quite proud of, and I'll give you the example. There's a company called Energy Vault in California that has established intellectual property around using gravity as a mechanism for storing power at a utility scale. They've never built a commercial scale version of this product, so my partner and I brought a Chinese company in to invest in this American company, $50 million. They paid $50 million for the exclusive license to deploy the technology in China, and they spent over $100 million building the very first 100 megawatt hour, gravity-based storage solution in Rudong, China.
Wow!
It's a great example of combining American and foreign innovation and kind of intellectual property with Chinese, know-how to build stuff.
Yep.
The Chinese are
The scale.
They know how to build it at scale.
Yeah.
And once this plant has been commissioned, they've already have like 10 lined up to build as the next round, and they're going to be so it's a, but that's the way the world, behind the scenes is kind of working. So there's a lot of optimism and hope about that kind of thing. And I do think that President Trump is in a unique position to bring our two countries together. And when there's less tension and less conflict between the two countries, inevitably that'll lead to more collaboration on the meeting the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has so beautifully laid out for the world to follow.
Fantastic. That gets me on to the United Nations itself. And, Neil, the UN was created. This is the vision of Roosevelt and Truman, and then we are celebrating the 80th year of the UN this year. 80 years ago, the vision that Truman had of a United Nations system and the charter came into existence, of which the US and China were co-signed onto that charter. Multilateralism is under threat. It's fragmenting, it's fracturing. The United Nations Secretary General has led the boldest reforms of the United Nations system to make it fit for purpose. You've seen the UN from your childhood. Your father was a great multilateralist, really believed in the system of the United Nations system, the multilateral trajectory that the United States really propagated. We are in a dilemma right now. What, in your view, can the UN do? Because we have a choice. We can be dynamic or dinosaurs. But we need a dynamic UN. The role of the US, the role of China is absolutely crucial in this. What do you think could be done now? What message would you want to give to my Secretary General to say,
Oh gosh, far be it for me to give him a message or advice. I really don't know that much about the incredible work that the UN is doing. I know it's incredible, the peacekeeping, the helping with refugee issues, the World Food Program, the programs that are out there, and the mediation services. All of that is amazing. I can't imagine it's going to go away, in spite of the fact that, as you point out, multilateralism is under threat. Because it plays such a vital role, and even with lower funding, I didn't chat GPT it on my way over here, but I assume the budget issues at the UN,
major budget
issues. So the United States, I assume, may be one of the reasons for that, because they're cutting back on donations or their contributions to the UN. So the work needs to go on, and I've got one personal kind of relationship through my daughter with the UN that I'll share with you, that makes me very proud of the work that the UN does and that she does. She started an organization called FEED. FEED is a nonprofit, well, it's a for-profit business that has a nonprofit mission. They sell tote bags, and for every bag sold, there's a number of meals served through the UN World Food Program. She's caused over 130 million meals to be served in schools in Africa.
Fantastic.
Since she started this program at Princeton when she was a student at Princeton.
My school.
I know, your school.
Yeah,
the fellow alum. And she's 40 something years old now, and she continues to be had this charitable mission. But I've learned through her work of the amazing work of the UN World Food Program. I mean, what if that didn't exist? How would the issue of providing meals, and especially I love the way Lauren's doing it through schools, because it gets kids to come to school, and it gives them a nutritious meal.
Of course,
it's like a brilliant program that would only be administered if there was a UN. And so, I don't know. I hope future presidents of the United States, I hope this trend towards isolationism and tearing down of multilateral conduct, I hope that goes away. And I think historically there are ebbs and flows and swings and that kind of thing, and we're kind of at a low point, hopefully, in this current trend. But the UN plays
it's interesting
a vital
you
role.
mentioned this, because I've been having a conversation with the Rockefeller Foundation, who are based out of New York, about the possibility of a school feeding program at scale throughout Africa. So they are actually looking for for partners, and they've
Yes.
also reached out to the Chinese government. So there may be conversations which have happened in Addis, because we've got the food security stock taking which is happening right now in Addis Ababa, where our deputy secretary general is.
Well,
So we should connect them to see, how can we go to scale,
Yeah.
because I think a school feeding program can have massive effect
Right.
on the development of human capital,
Yes,
and we know that
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe, wherever there's a challenge presented to a country or to a people, the answer to that challenge makes you stronger.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So, the idea that the United States is cutting off high tech to China, it's only enabling China to go develop their own technology. You know what I mean? It make them less dependent on us, and they'll become independent, and potentially it's the same thing's true. For example, in this food program, it's a great idea to bring in the Rockefeller Foundation to find partnerships that can, because the program works.
Yeah.
It just needs money.
Of course.
So
Well, money and resources and
Right.
political capital, because you want
Right.
the leadership also of these countries to come together to see this could be a common cause, and it can
Right.
make such a big difference. Our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed is a strong believer in this. In fact, when I was the resident coordinator in Kenya, this is one of the first places she visited of young Kenyans who've taken ownership to say, we will have school feeding programs for schools, and they set up kitchens, etc., and found revenues from local communities. But if we can actually generate a momentum towards this, where the school feeding program, the school itself can become a producer
Yes.
of kitchen gardens.
I love that.
They could actually go to scale. By the way, from a statistics point of view, agro-business in Africa is expected to reach $1 trillion by 2030. So huge potential there
Right.
from a business opportunity as well.
Right.
So, Neil, I've served half my career in Africa, and I saw the PEPFAR program started during, I think, your brother's administration.
Yeah.
It has saved millions of lives from AIDS preventable deaths.
Right.
Millions of lives. What do you think could be done now? Here is an opportunity not just in school feeding, but there is so much that could be done in Africa, and this convergence around Africa.
I think our government will find the right path towards providing the support and the aid and the resources that we've been giving historically, that has made America kind of the bright shining light on the mountain of So I have it's hard to have a lot of confidence at this particular moment. But it could be a President Trump legacy that he brings these programs back. I think he's showing great empathy with what's happening in Gaza today. And so the guy cares about, hunger and feeding and suffering and that kind of thing. And so I hope he understands the power of America in being that mechanism for providing resources and addressing challenges through our soft power, through the aid we provide, and through programs like the program my brother, set up, which is one of his greatest legacies, the PEPFAR program.
Neil, as we come to the end of this conversation, I'm reminded of my time in Kenya. And I remember I came there in 2014. One of the biggest challenges Kenya faced then was it was amongst the 10 most dangerous places for a woman to give birth. The levels of maternal mortality, that means women dying at childbirth, was out of control. So I recall the former executive director of UNFPA, Babatunde Usatime, and he's no more, he passed, said to me that you need to go fix this problem. And I remember I put together a coalition of partners to deal with this. So it was the UN system, and we brought in Huawei from China, Merck from the United States, Philips from the Netherlands, Safaricom from Kenya, and GlaxoSmithKline from the UK. And it was a conversation, a partnership was forged. The Kenyan government took full ownership under the leadership of the First Lady of Kenya then. In a matter of 2.5 years, and the UN invested about $15 million from a trust fund. In a matter of 2.5 years, we were able to reduce the maternal deaths by 1/3 in the highest burden counties. But today, that same program has become a $150 million telemedicine program. And here, an American corporation and a Chinese corporation are actually collaborating not only in delivering a global good, but also a sustainable program which is also becoming extremely profitable into the future. So, I just see.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I
That's an
just see.
amazing legacy of yours.
Well, I just see incredible opportunities also on the business side. I mean, potentially I can see, when post Second World War, we saw the Marshall Plan. And that really changed Europe. It connected Europe both physically and digitally. It led to the creation of a European Union. I believe a Marshall Plan, which brings China, the U.S., the European Union, and others together to transform Africa, Latin America, we will see global progress and prosperity.
I'm so impressed with you, because I love your vision. I love your passion, and I love the way you think through these issues. Because you're 100% right. There needs to be a focused, multilateral kind of buy-in
Approach
from
to
the
this,
top, effort to address that issue, but all the major issues that confront it. I can't understand why there's famine in the world. I can't understand why there's war and conflict and fighting. I can't it makes no sense to me.
It doesn't.
With the massive amount of resources and I don't know, the overwhelming amount of benevolence that exists, that there's so much pain and suffering, and it should be unbearable and intolerable, and we should have a massive Marshall Plan type plan for all these issues.
Indeed.
I
Indeed.
agree with you 100%.
Well, Neil, what a pleasure.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
I was hoping we might talk, Sid, about your amazing role modeling for good health. One of the things I think that's really important for the world is that people, stop leaning into medicine and start leaning into, to lifestyle changes that will extend life. Sid, look, I just turned 70 this year, and I've become.
No, you don't look 70. You look 40.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm gonna look 30 next week because I'm having a procedure done in Shanghai. But when I turn 70, and as I get older, I've become somewhat obsessed with the idea of living a longer health span, and I'm inspired by you personally. I really am. But it raises the question. What can we do? What needs to be done to have a more proactive approach towards health?
Neil, I suffered from chronic diseases 5 years ago. I was obese, I had high blood pressure, I was pre-diabetic, and I was on cholesterol medicines. That means statins of 30 milligrams daily, which I had to have for 15 years. Today, not only have I reversed all of that, I'm on no medication whatsoever. But what I found is that when we dive into traditional areas of Chinese Taoism or the Indian yoga and the pranayama and, bringing this all together, today modern medicine is actually catching up to find out that actually prevention is possible.
Yes.
So I've been practicing it on myself, and it's completely transformed my life, both physically and also kind of dealt with some of the mental stresses I carried with me, through my career in the UN, working in some of the most hostile places. Neil, I believe this could be an interesting place for collaboration. Chronic diseases is afflicting the United States of America. Do you know there's an interesting statistic? Only 10% of the American population are considered to be in good metabolic health.
Isn't that amazing?
And even in China, there's increasing levels of obesity. 150 million people with diabetes, nearly 240 million with hypertension, nearly 300 million with with cardiovascular diseases. I think there's massive potential, both in the area of prevention, but also in the curative side. And if we can bring traditional Chinese medicine and connect that with modern pharmacies in the US, we may have a win-win situation there to deal with global health, not only chronic diseases, but future pandemics too.
I think it's really hopeful, by the way, that there are many innovative, entrepreneurial, businesses popping up.
Indeed.
I've seen it often in the United States. I had meetings today in China where 3 companies came and were describing their longevity plans and their anti-aging plans, and they have clinics, and it's like, I just love it. I love the fact that they're making money from it.
Indeed.
That they're building models.
Well, that's how it's sustainable.
That's exactly how it's sustainable. But anyway, well, thank you for
Fantastic.
having me. You're
Lovely.
an
Thank you.
amazing friend and
Thank
an
you.
incredible
Thank you.
leader. Thank you,
What
Sid.
a great discussion it
Really
was to
my
have you
pleasure.
today, and really appreciate your taking the time and joining us for this UN in China podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do.